She laughed at him, in front of everyone. A black janitor, caught touching the grand piano before the concert, humiliated by the rich prodigy who thought she ruled the room. Phones out. Eyes rolling. Laughter echoing. But minutes later, the same crowd stood frozen, tears in their eyes, as that same janitor played a melody so powerful, it broke her. And when the truth of who he really was came out, she collapsed at his feet. Stay with me, because what happens next will change how you see music, greatness, and yourself. The Sapphire Grand Hall was buzzing with anticipation. Tonight was the debut of Isabella Hawthorne, the 17-year-old piano prodigy hailed as the Swan of the South. The daughter of a media tycoon, draped in icy blue silk, she floated through backstage like she owned the air itself. But in that same hall, in the quiet before the show began, Marcus Ellis, the janitor, black, gray-haired, invisible, paused by the Bosendorfer piano. He placed a wrinkled hand on its polished surface, just to make sure it was clean. Just to feel it once more. That's when it happened. Hey! You! Isabella's voice cracked like a whip. What do you think you're doing? She hissed, her voice cold and cruel. That piano is worth more than your life. Laughter erupted around them. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "This'll go viral." Marcus bowed his head. "I'm sorry, Miss Hawthorne. I was just..." "You were just overstepping," she snapped. "You mopped the floors. That's all." Marcus backed away, pushing his squeaky cart, his pride tucked into his chest like something too fragile to show. But as he disappeared into the shadows, something inside him stirred, something not yet dead. Because what Isabella and the entire room didn't know, was that Marcus Ellis hadn't always been a janitor. He had once played that very same piano in this very hall under a different name. And tonight, he was done hiding. As the lights dimmed and Isabella prepared to take the stage, Marcus lingered backstage. He could hear the audience taking their seats, the whispers, the clink of champagne glasses, the soft rustle of designer gowns. He closed his eyes. He remembered what it felt like to belong on stage. Not to clean it. To own it. Suddenly, the silence behind the curtain shifted. Marcus stepped forward. One step. Then another. Without invitation, without announcement, he walked to the grand piano, sat down, and placed his fingers on the keys. At first, no one noticed. But then a single note. One pure, aching note that sliced through the noise like truth itself. Every head turned. The chatter died. Isabella, still basking in her pre-show glow, froze. "Get him off that piano," she shrieked. But it was too late. Marcus Ellis played. Not like a janitor. Not like a man who had been broken by the world. But like someone who remembered who he was. Like someone who had nothing left to prove and everything left to say. And that music? It silenced the critics. It pierced the hearts of strangers. It melted every layer of arrogance wrapped around Isabella Hawthorne's chest. Because what he played wasn't just a song. It was grief. It was memory. It was the story of a man who had once been Miles Everhart, the former principal pianist of the New York Symphony Orchestra, a legend who vanished after the death of his only daughter. The audience didn't breathe. Isabella's knees buckled. And then a voice from the shadows. A woman stepped forward in a dark navy suit. Calm. Fierce. Respected. She took the mic. "For those who don't recognize him, allow me. This is Miles Everhart. 20 years ago, his music could fill concert halls from New York to Vienna. Tonight, it filled this room once more." Gasps echoed across the hall. Phones dropped. Isabella's face turned pale. The man she humiliated was a genius the world thought was dead. She watched as he stood, bowed silently, and walked away, never once looking back. Later that night, unable to sleep, she found him by the service exit, pushing that old cart once more. "Mr. Ellis, no Mr. Everhart," she whispered, choking on the words. I didn't know. I was awful. He looked at her. No anger. Just sorrow. And somehow, forgiveness. You only saw what you were taught to see, he said softly. But true greatness, it doesn't shine. It listens. Her tears spilled freely. I want to change, she said. He nodded. Then begin. Isabella returned to the stage. Alone. Humbled. Changed. And for the first time in her life, she didn't play for applause. She played from the broken, beating thing inside her chest she had once ignored. And the world felt it. From that day on, she stopped chasing perfection. She started chasing truth. And Miles Everhart? He faded once more into the quiet, but this time, his legacy echoed in every trembling note she ever played. Greatness isn't always loud. Sometimes, it pushes a cart, walks in shadows, and waits for the moment when truth must be heard. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it. And remember, you never know who's standing silently in the corner, holding a masterpiece inside. He was left bleeding in the desert with a gun to his head, not by criminals, but by the very men sworn to protect the law. Jeremiah Knox, a high-ranking black FBI director, was handcuffed, beaten, and humiliated during a routine traffic stop in Texas, because one small-town cop thought his badge gave him the right to play God. What they didn't know was, they just declared war on the wrong man. Within 12 hours, that highway stop would spiral into a full-blown manhunt, a courtroom explosion, and a national reckoning that would tear down an entire political empire. He survived a planted drug raid on his family, a sniper's bullet to the chest, and a corrupt judge's legal trap, but what hurt most, was watching his wife and son walk away at the end of it all. This is the true, jaw-dropping story of how a single lie nearly destroyed a man who built his life on justice until he fought back and made the system bleed. Stay with us, because what happens next will shock you. Comment below if you stand for justice, hit that like button to support the truth, and subscribe for more stories they don't want you to hear. The desert night pressed down like a suffocating blanket, still hovering at 90 degrees Fahrenheit even hours after the sun had bled behind the western mesas. On the side of Highway 80, somewhere 40 miles west of El Paso, a silver sedan sat skewed on the gravel shoulder, its hazard lights blinking in a rhythm that felt more like a countdown than a warning. Beside it stood a tall black man, dressed in a crisp navy suit, his hands raised calmly in the stale air. Blood trickled down his temple, the split in his skin fresh opened by the very baton still gripped in the hand of a white police officer snarling in his face. License and registration, boy, the officer barked. Jeremiah Knox didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. The blood from his temple had begun to dry, crusting against the collar of his white dress shirt. His hazel eyes, clear and calculating, locked onto the two cops in front of him, one holding a gun with the safety off, the other struggling between protocol and panic. You're digging your own graves, Knox said, voice like gravel but steady. You have no idea who I am. Officer Brent Hensley spat into the dirt, his fingers tightening around the grip of his pistol. I don't give a damn who you think you are. And in that moment, with the moon a faded coin overhead and the flashlight searing his vision, Jeremiah Knox wondered how it had come to this. Just 12 hours ago, he'd been on the open road, headed home tired, hopeful, and unaware that he was about to step into hell. 12 hours earlier, the world was quiet. The silver sedan sliced through the outskirts of El Paso like a bullet through silence. The sky above was bruised purple, the last smear of daylight fading behind jagged rock formations. Knox kept the cruise control locked at 55 miles per hour, hands at 10 and 2, every motion precise and deliberate. The jazz station out of Houston crackled softly through the speakers, Coltrane's saxophone weaving a lazy counterpoint to the hum of the engine. Knox exhaled, letting the music cut through the tension he carried. For the first time in months, he was heading home without an escort, without backup, without any case files to drag him down. Just him and the road. He was picturing it, his back porch, the grill lit, a thick ribeye sizzling, a cold Shiner Bock in his hand while crickets chirped beneath the pines. He'd earned it 20 years of federal service, from beat cop in Atlanta to director of the FBI's Houston office. 6'2", all grit and discipline, Knox had taken down mob bosses, drug lords, and even a sitting senator. But right now, all he wanted was a weekend without blood. The odometer read 212,000 miles. A testament to how many nights he'd driven highways just like this one, unforgiving, empty, and always watching. He'd learned early that being a black man behind the wheel came with a price. No matter the badge in his jacket pocket. No matter the rank. A flicker of red and blue lit up his rearview mirror. No sirens. Just lights. Jeremiah's stomach twisted. Not again. He glanced at his dashboard. No warnings. No errors. Fuel tank at 3/4. Speed steady. Everything perfect. And yet. He eased the car off onto the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath the tires. The jazz faded into static as he killed the engine. The desert fell silent. He adjusted his tie, a habit, a shield. Then his hand brushed the badge in his inner pocket. Federal Bureau of Investigation. A title that meant nothing when the uniform approaching the car already saw him as a threat. A silhouette approached in the mirror, backlit by fading sunset and patrol car lights. Tall. Wiry. Cocky stride. Hensley. No tap on the window. No flashlight sweep. Just the voice. License and registration, boy. The word hit harder than the desert wind. Knox turned, calmly, voice controlled. May I ask why I was pulled over, officer? Hensley sneered, leaning close enough that Knox could smell the sour reek of chewing tobacco. You people always got questions. Then slam. The officer's fist came down on the hood, a resounding clang that echoed off the scrubland. A grapefruit-sized dent bloomed in the pristine silver. Knox didn't react. He couldn't afford to. His jaw clenched, but his voice remained even. You don't have a reason to stop me. But Hensley wasn't looking for reasons. He was looking for reactions. The stars were out now, a canopy over a powder keg. Knox felt it in his bones. This wasn't routine. This wasn't random. This was personal. And it was about to get worse. Out of the car, Hensley ordered. Knox obeyed, every motion deliberate. His tall frame unfolded from the sedan like a soldier stepping into enemy terrain. The second officer, Pete Rollins, stocky, younger, emerged from the second cruiser just as Knox was shoved against the hood. You don't belong on this road, Hensley hissed. Never did. Knox's ribs flared with pain, but he didn't cry out. Didn't fight. He'd been through worse. He could survive this, he had to. But the calm broke when Hensley snapped the cuffs on tight. Too tight. Knox felt the skin break. Blood soaked the cuff of his sleeve. You're going to regret this, Knox muttered, his voice low. But Hensley just laughed. You already have. As they stuffed him into the back of the cruiser, headlights flared in the distance. Knox didn't know yet if they meant salvation, or doom. The back seat of the cruiser was a furnace. Vinyl seats burned through Jeremiah Knox's suit jacket, sticking to his skin as sweat and blood mingled beneath the fabric. Outside, the desert still radiated heat, 90 degrees Fahrenheit and rising again, even though the sun had long since dipped beneath the horizon. Inside the car, the air conditioning was a joke, barely more than a whisper against the rising pressure in his chest. His hands, cuffed too tight behind his back, throbbed in time with the pulse pounding behind his eyes. Blood from the baton strike on his temple had dried into a sticky trail down his jaw, staining his shirt collar a deep rust. Every breath stung. He wasn't sure if the pain in his ribs came from the shove against the car or if something inside had cracked. In the front seat, Officer Hensley laughed at his own joke, the sound dark and casual. This one thought he was special, he sneered, spitting tobacco juice into a cup wedged between the seats. Flashed some kind of badge. Real Hollywood type. Officer Pete Rollins chuckled from the passenger side, his buzzcut head silhouetted against the flashing dashboard lights. You sure he wasn't fed? Hensley shrugged. Sure as I am white. FBI don't drive old sedans through El Paso like they own the place. But Jeremiah Knox didn't answer. He didn't blink. His eyes, steady and sharp, were locked on the rearview mirror where he could just make out the smug twist of Hensley's lips. He memorized it. The angle. The inflection. The rhythm of the taunt. He was cataloging everything. Not just because he was trained to, but because this was bigger than ego or violence. Something was off. Something felt coordinated. And he'd seen too many men swallowed by silence. But Knox wasn't built for silence. He shifted his weight subtly, pushing his right wrist downward beneath his thigh where a barely noticeable bulge pressed against the inner seam of his suit pants. It wasn't standard issue, not anymore. But Knox had served undercover before. He knew how to build failsafes. And inside that stitched fold was a micro earpiece no bigger than a bean. Tapped into a secure FBI channel. With a flick of his thumb, he nudged it into his palm, then carefully worked it into place in his right ear. Static. Then a voice. Knox. Come again. He kept his voice low. Barely audible. More breath than sound. Hayes. This is Knox. Highway 80. 40 miles west of El Paso. Detained. No cause. Hensley and Rollins. I need eyes now. Silence. Then the line crackled. Copy. Coordinates locked. Tactical birds 20 minutes out. Hold your ground. Knox allowed himself one breath of relief. It was enough. The cruiser jolted as Hensley swerved off the main highway onto a dirt road. Gravel sprayed against the undercarriage, and the headlights revealed nothing but cactus and dust. You know what I think, Pete? Hensley grinned as the cruiser lurched down the path. I think our boy back there's gonna learn a real valuable lesson about showing off. Rollins laughed again. Teach him the El Paso way. Damn right. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. And just as Hensley began bragging again, spinning a lie about a resisting suspect, a violent outburst, some tale about a reach for a weapon, Jeremiah Knox heard it. Low at first. A whisper in the wind. Then louder. Rotor blades. The desert sky exploded in white as a tactical helicopter swept low over the cruiser, its spotlight slamming down like judgment from above. Dust whipped in a cyclone as Hensley screamed and slammed the brakes, the cruiser fishtailing to a hard stop. What the hell? Rollins dropped his phone in the footwell as the voice echoed from above. FBI. Release the detainee immediately. Officers Hensley and Rollins, you are under federal observation. Hensley went pale. His sunburned face turned to ash as his hands fumbled for the door lock. Misunderstanding, sir, it was just a mix-up. Rollins was already babbling. We didn't know. He didn't say he was. The cuffs clattered to the floorboard as Hensley yanked them off with trembling fingers. Knox stepped out slowly, brushing the dust from his pants, his face unreadable. Blood still stained his cheek, and his collar was soaked through, but his back was straight, and his voice was calm. I told you. The helicopter descended 50 yards out. Agents in black vests dropped from the side doors, rifles ready, boots slamming into the gravel like thunder. Floodlights bathed the scene in sterile white. Hensley didn't run. He didn't speak. He just stood there, blinking like a man who'd been caught sleepwalking into a fire. Knox walked away without another word. He climbed back into his sedan, the dented hood still glinting from where Hensley's fist had landed. The FBI bird hovered overhead as escort. His engine roared to life, and he rolled east, toward Houston. toward home. But 20 miles down the highway, as the adrenaline ebbed and the AC finally cooled his skin, his phone buzzed. A new upload. From an anonymous account. Tied to the El Paso Sheriff's Department. 30 seconds of grainy, silent dash cam footage. Edited. Spliced. Distorted. Knox, stepping out of his vehicle, lunging forward. A fake scream dubbed over the cut, "I'll kill you, pig." No footage of the cuffs. No baton. No blood. Just one lie and a million possible clicks. The caption, "FBI thug threatens officer caught on camera." Knox stared at the screen. Not with fear. But fury. The game had just changed. And the real hunt was only beginning. The glow of Houston's skyline was still 100 miles away when Jeremiah Knox first spotted the tail lights. 3 sets. Too close. Too synchronized. Creeping up behind him like predators circling their kill. He eased off the gas. Dropped from 70 to 60. They adjusted instantly. Closing the distance. His jaw clenched. The dry air, still 85 degrees Fahrenheit, blew in through the shattered edge of his windshield courtesy of the brick that had almost ended his life an hour ago. His white shirt, stained with blood from the cuffs and the baton, clung to him like armor long past its prime. He adjusted his grip on the steering wheel and whispered to himself, "They're not done." The Confederate flag was the first thing he saw. It flapped violently from the bed of the lifted pickup truck that had surged to his left, its headlights burning bright into his lane. A second truck appeared to his right. A third behind. All massive, all dented, with oversized tires that roared like tanks. Their engines boxed him in. The bridge ahead loomed narrow, ancient, and suspended over a bone-dry riverbed that dropped nearly 30 feet below. The wooden planks beneath the asphalt were old. Fragile. One mistake, and he'd go sailing into darkness. Knox's heart pounded as he scanned for a way out. There was none. Then came the first strike. A brick. It punched through the windshield like a missile. Glass exploded inward. A jagged shard sliced across Knox's cheek, hot blood welling instantly and tracing a path down to his collar. He swerved hard, tires shrieking on the brittle bridge. The sedan fishtailed violently, but he wrestled it back under control, one hand braced on the dash, the other gripping the wheel like a lifeline. From the lead truck, a voice bellowed, "Get out, you black bastard." It was a full-throated roar of hatred. No disguise. No hesitation. No doubt about what this was. This wasn't random. This was vengeance. Fueled by that video. That lie. That carefully edited clip designed to dehumanize him in 30 seconds or less. And now the lie had teeth. One of the trucks clipped his rear bumper. The sedan jolted forward. His head snapped back against the headrest. Another brick hit the passenger side window and bounced off. A man stood in the back of the pickup, laughing, holding a baseball bat aloft like a trophy. Knox slammed the accelerator. The engine howled in protest as he pushed 80. His sedan surged ahead, tires skimming the cracked planks of the bridge. But the lead truck veered across the double line, forcing him to slam the brakes. The tires locked. Smoke poured from the wheel wells. That's when the second truck rammed him again from behind this time. The wheel jerked violently. For a split second, he felt the car tilt toward the edge of the bridge. The black void of the riverbed opened wide to his right. He yanked the steering wheel left, hard. The sedan scraped the guardrail, metal screaming as sparks flew. His side mirror shattered. His tie was soaked with sweat and blood. His eyes stung. But he kept it together. Because Jeremiah Knox had trained for ambushes. Just not like this. He'd faced cartel assassins. He'd stared down men with bombs strapped to their chests. But those men wore masks. These didn't. This was the kind of hate that festered on backroads and message boards, inflamed by a lie and given permission to act. He floored it again. Hit 90. The bridge disappeared in the rearview. The trucks gave chase. He weaved between lanes, trying to shake them. One peeled off, but two stayed with him like wolves locked on a scent. He could see their drivers now. White men. Hard eyes. Harder grins. One of them filmed on his phone while shouting something Knox couldn't hear over the wind. He knew it was being streamed. Every second. Another piece of evidence, another clip to be twisted. Suddenly, a voice crackled through a CB radio in the lead truck. Jeremiah heard it clear as day through the broken windshield. Finish him for me. Hensley. That same venom. That same smug arrogance. It wasn't over. It was coordinated. Knox's blood went cold. The trucks accelerated again, engines growling. But then suddenly they peeled off. As if on cue. Their red tail lights vanished over the crest of a hill, swallowed by the dark. Knox didn't ease up. He kept driving. 95. Then 100. His hands shook. His breathing ragged. A single thought looped in his mind, this wasn't a random mob. It was a hit. He gripped the wheel tighter, glass crunching under his dress shoes. He whispered it like a vow, blood dripping from the cut on his cheek, "You're going to regret this." Not just Hensley. Not just the men in those trucks. But the entire system that gave them permission. Jeremiah Knox gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned pale. The stolen piece of his Texas drive was long gone, replaced by blood, glass, and the pounding echo of "Finish him for me" still rattling in his ears. He was 50 miles from Houston now. The skyline wasn't in view yet, but his mind was already their home. With Lena. With Jamal. He hadn't seen his wife and son in 3 days, not since leaving for the El Paso field office. But the past 12 hours had aged him 10 years. His shirt was torn. His shoulder throbbed. The cut on his cheek stung where glass had embedded. And now, more than anything, he needed to warn them. He reached into the glove box, pulled out a cracked flip phone, an old burner left over from an undercover sting in Corpus Christi, and dialed. Ring. 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 Jeremiah. Lena's voice came through, groggy. Where are you? It's what, almost 1 a.m. Listen to me, he said, tone sharp, no time for comfort. Pack a bag. Grab Jamal. Get out of the house. Go to Marcia's in Austin. What? Jeremiah, what the hell? They framed me, he cut in. The El Paso PD, Hensley. They're coming. Don't ask questions. Just leave. Please. A beat of silence. Then, wait, what do you mean, coming? Who is? Marcus, slow down. Click. The line went dead. He stared at the screen. No service. He looked up. That's when the first SUV appeared in the distance, not near him, but in front of his house. Back in Houston, Lena Knox stood barefoot in their kitchen, her braid half unraveled, gripping the cordless phone like it had burned her. The dial tone buzzed. Still disconnected. She peered through the blinds. A black SUV parked at the curb. Then another. Then a third. She backed away from the window, heart thundering, just as their security lights snapped on. Doors flew open. Boots hit pavement, the front door exploded inward a split second later. She screamed as the battering ram smashed through the lock. Wood splinters flew, glass shattered, and half a dozen officers stormed in shouting, hands in the air. Houston PD. Search warrant. She barely had time to raise her arms before a gloved hand shoved her to the floor, her knees slamming against the hardwood. This is a mistake, she shouted. This is my house. Upstairs, Jamal screamed, "Mom!" She twisted just in time to see her 12-year-old son being dragged down the stairs in his pajamas, one sock half off, his Spider-Man comic books falling like confetti. His wrists were zip-tied. His face twisted in fear. He's just a kid. He didn't do anything. But no one listened. One officer, a square-jawed man with a too-tight vest, smirked and dropped a Ziploc bag onto the coffee table. A full pound of pristine white powder. "Looks like Daddy left behind a little bonus, huh?" Lena stared at it, horror twisting in her gut. They'd planted it. She lunged forward. "That's not ours. That's not." A knee pressed into her back, and the smirking officer leaned close to her ear. "Your husband's a drug trafficker. FBI's just his front. Whole city's watching now. You're an accessory." Her hands shook as they cuffed her. And on the wall-mounted TV behind her, the news was already running the story. Breaking: FBI Director Jeremiah Knox linked to interstate trafficking ring. Wife and minor detained. More at 11. The anchor's face was calm. Almost smug. Lena's scream echoed through the living room as the cuffs tightened. Upstairs, Jamal cried. "Dad didn't do this. He's a good guy," but the narrative had already taken root. Jeremiah pulled into a derelict gas station 45 miles out of Houston. A neon sign buzzed overhead. The pump hadn't seen maintenance in years. He stood beside his dented sedan, blood still crusted on his collar, sweat soaking through his shirt, fingers trembling as he tried to reconnect the call. Nothing. No bars. He slammed the phone onto the pavement, shattering it into 3 pieces. A trucker stared from the other side of the lot. Jeremiah didn't care. He stumbled toward the payphone, a rusted relic bolted to the side of the building and shoved in a quarter. Pick up," he muttered as the line rang. "Hayes. They hit my family. Raided the house. Planted drugs. Jamal, Lena, they took them. I need a team now. Static. Then, I'm tracking them. Hold position. We'll extract." Jeremiah didn't wait. He hung up, rage boiling in his veins, the blood. The lies. The cuffs. The bricks. Now they'd come for his family. This wasn't about El Paso anymore. It wasn't about Hensley's bruised ego or a dirty traffic stop. This was a system built to erase men like him. Built to erase truth. And he'd be damned if he let it erase his family. He climbed back into the sedan. The door creaked. The dented hood cast a shadow across the dashboard. And as he gripped the wheel again, he whispered not a threat, but a promise, "I'm coming for all of you." Jeremiah Knox leaned over the cracked payphone, breath shallow, voice shredded. "They took my family, planted coke in my living room, zip-tied my son like a suspect." His blood-soaked palm gripped the receiver tighter as Deputy Director Hayes' voice crackled back through the static, "We're mobilizing. Safe house 50 miles southwest. Coordinates inbound." Knox didn't wait. He slammed the phone into its cradle, quarters clattering to the concrete, stormed to the stolen cruiser still idling beside the pump, engine ticking from the punishing drive. His white dress shirt was a rag of blood and sweat, his navy tie long gone, his hazel eyes burning like fire behind the cracked windshield. As he floored it west, the desert swallowed him once more, the road a blur of dust and heat. He didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Not until the bunker came into view, a squat steel structure nestled beneath mesquite thickets off a dirt road 50 miles out. He slid the cruiser to a stop, stepping out into the spotlight cast by a blacked-out Suburban. 6 agents in black tactical gear stepped forward. Hayes among them, jaw clenched, rifle slung across his chest. "They've locked us out of the precinct system," Hayes said. "Local PD's stonewalling. Your wife and kid are still in holding. Hensley's reach is deeper than we thought." Knox nodded, blood still dripping from his temple. Hayes handed him a burner tablet, live feeds from the precinct, hacked body cams, security angles, records scrubbed. Let's hit them back. Hard, Knox muttered. No hesitation. No second guesses. His voice cut through the stale night like a blade. Plans snapped into motion. Within an hour, warrants were drafted, video evidence time-stamped and packaged, the edited dash cam video countered with raw footage from his earpiece, the radio chatter of "finish him" spliced in, Hensley's voice unmistakable. The operation was airtight, stitched with 20 years of federal precision. At 3 a.m., the helicopter lifted off. Rotor blades shredded the desert silence as Knox, now strapped into tactical gear, pressed a fresh dressing to his shoulder where the sniper had grazed him. Pain flared through his ribs with every breath. The adrenaline smothered it. The desert below shifted from ink to bruised purple as the horizon cracked with the first hints of dawn. They descended fast. El Paso's crooked precinct compound grew larger beneath them, squat brick and concrete wrapped in chain link and bad intentions. Flashbangs cracked as agents repelled through the haze. Tear gas bloomed in streaks of silver smoke. Knox limped through the chaos, Glock drawn, eyes locked on the office at the end of the hall, Hensley's den. He kicked the door in mid-sentence, catching Hensley on a burner phone, barking orders, tell Voss to bury the wife's case. Knox stepped through the swirling gas, his voice a low growl, "You're done, Victor." Hensley froze, eyes wide, face red with sun and shame. He reached for his nightstick. Too late. Agents tackled him, face first into the file cabinet. Rollins was in the corner, white as chalk, hands shaking. Live feeds outside captured everything: SWAT gear, FBI vests, camera crews that had been tipped off by Hayes. They filmed the arrests in real time. Local affiliates streamed it. Hashtags ignited. Knox stepped into the sunlight just as it crested the horizon. Blood on his knuckles. Bruised ribs screaming. But he stood tall. Hayes clapped his shoulder. He's going down. 10 years minimum. Knox nodded, eyes on the squad car where Hensley now sat cuffed and smirking. Rollins wept beside him. But it wasn't over. A crack split the morning air. A sniper round tore across Knox's vest, grazing his upper shoulder. Blood sprayed. He dropped to one knee as agents scattered, shouting, "Sniper!" Rooftop. Chaos surged again. He looked down. A piece of paper fluttered to the asphalt beside him. Black ink. Neat handwriting. "You're next, traitor." He stared at it, the meaning sinking deeper than the bullet wound. Not revenge. A warning. A signal. Hensley wasn't the head. Just a blade. Someone else was pulling strings. And they'd just declared war. Across the lot, Hensley sat in the back of the cruiser, cuffs biting into his wrists, watching the blood pool beneath Knox. His lips curled. He mouthed, "This ain't over." Knox knew he was right. Not even close. Jeremiah Knox limped through the steel-framed doors of the El Paso County Courthouse, the sun high now, burning at 75 degrees Fahrenheit, the sniper's bullet wound freshly bandaged beneath a tailored charcoal suit. His left shoulder ached, ribs still bruised, jaw still discolored where Hensley's baton had cracked it. But he walked tall. The halls buzzed with tension, reporters crowding stairwells, locals whispering behind hands. Everyone knew this wasn't a standard hearing. This was war, playing out beneath oak-paneled ceilings and fluorescent lights. Inside the courtroom, over 200 spectators were jammed into wooden benches. The air was thick with anticipation. Knox took the stand beneath the glare of recessed bulbs and camera lenses, no trace of the blood that had soaked his shirt just days earlier, but the pain still etched into his eyes. The gavel slammed. Court in session. Victor Hensley sat at the defense table, wiry frame stuffed into a too-small gray suit. His smirk was gone. Only defiance remained in his pale blue eyes. His lawyer, Ray Carver, slick and composed, whispered something through clenched teeth as Knox raised his right hand and swore in. He sat. Steady. Composed. 20 years in the bureau had trained him for this moment. The prosecutor, Carla Ortiz, a sharp-eyed woman with a calm fury in her stride, stepped up. She laid it all out. The unlawful stop on Highway 80. The assault. The doctor dashcam footage. The mob attack. The planted drugs. The SWAT raid. The sniper. She walked the jury through each moment like lining up dominoes. Then she pressed play. On the monitors, raw footage. Hensley's voice, clear as day, "You people always think you're above the law." The baton strike. The cuffs. The chopper's arrival. The lie unraveling in real time. Gasps rippled through the room. Ortiz didn't flinch. She turned to the jury. This man was not just beaten. He was hunted. Not for what he did but for who he is. Knox testified next. Calm. Controlled. He called me, boy. Slammed a baton into my head. Then sent a mob to kill me. When that didn't work, he planted cocaine in my living room and dragged my son out of bed in zip ties. His voice didn't shake. But his hands, under the desk, clenched until the knuckles paled. The jury, 10 locals, most white, 2 Hispanic, watched every frame of video. Listened to every word. Hensley's lawyer tried to paint the beating as a misunderstanding, suggested Knox escalated. Tried to twist the story. But it didn't land. Not after hearing, "Finish him," over police comms. Not after seeing the raw video. Not after Ortiz played the precinct security feed showing Hensley's entrance into the interview room moments before the second beating. All corroborated. All time-stamped. 3 hours in, the jury left to deliberate. 78 minutes later, they returned. The foreman stood. Guilty. On all counts. Abuse of power. Assault. Conspiracy. The gavel cracked like a gunshot. Hensley's shoulders slumped as deputies cuffed him, stripping his badge. Rollins wept behind him, stammering apologies. Knox exhaled. For the first time in 48 hours, he thought it might finally be over. But it wasn't. As he stepped down from the stand, the gallery erupted. Not with applause. With screams. Traitor. Cop killer. A cluster of 30 men in the back, Confederate patches glinting on jackets, surged forward. One hurled a bottle. It shattered against Knox's bandaged shoulder, glass slicing through the fabric. Blood bloomed fresh across his suit. Deputies swarmed. Fists flew. Chairs overturned. Knox stumbled, hand brushing the butt of his Glock. But Hayes was there, pulling him back. "Not worth it," he muttered. "Not here." They forced their way through the chaos. Shouts echoed behind them. He framed him. "It's a setup." Send him back where he came from. Outside, the courthouse steps were flooded with reporters. Knox blinked against the midday sun. His shoulder screamed. Hayes clapped him on the back. "We did it," he said. 10 years, minimum. Knox didn't smile. Because he saw it. The courier pushing through the crowd, envelope in hand. Knox took it, blood from his fingertips smearing the seal. He opened it. A warrant. Signed by Judge Harold Voss. Jeremiah Knox. Evidence tampering. Federal review pending. He stared at it. Silent. Hayes read over his shoulder and hissed, "Voss. That's the judge Hensley bragged about owning." Knox nodded, throat tight. "This isn't a conviction. It's a warning shot." The mob screamed louder as they loaded Hensley into the van. He caught Knox's eye. And smirked. Not in defeat. But in promise. This was never about prison. This was about silence. And the system had just handed Knox his next noose, legal, public, and deadly. The war wasn't over. It had just changed shape. Jeremiah Knox pressed the gas pedal of the borrowed FBI sedan, tires screaming as he tore away from the El Paso courthouse. The warrant still crumpled in his hand, Judge Vasa's name smeared with blood from the bottle that had sliced open his shoulder moments ago. 92 degrees Fahrenheit and climbing, the desert stretched endlessly in front of him, dust swirling across the sun-baked asphalt of Interstate 10. His white shirt, once fresh, was soaked through with sweat and blood, the navy jacket torn at the seam, ribs aching with every bump in the road. In the rearview, his team's SUV followed at a distance, Hayes and 3 agents, trailing close enough to act, but not close enough to stop what was coming. The burner phone buzzed in his pocket. Hayes. They've stalled Lena and Jamal's release. Vasa's people are tying up the paperwork, locking us out of the system. Knox's jaw tightened. I'm 50 miles out. Taking the desert route. If they want a war, I'll bring it to their front door. He hung up. He didn't see the cruisers until it was too late. 2 black and whites appeared behind him. El Paso PD, no lights, no sirens, just speed. They closed in fast, doing 110, the sun glinting off their hoods like knives. He cursed, floored it. The sedan responded, jumping to 100, engine roaring, but the road narrowed into a dry wash, sand drifted up to the edges. He was funneled. The first cruiser rammed his bumper. The wheel jerked violently in his hands. Pain shot through his shoulder as the seatbelt cut into his chest. Then the second cruiser hit from the side. The road tilted. The tires screamed. Sand sucked the sedan sideways. The car flipped. Twice. Metal crunched. Glass exploded. His head slammed the roof. Then silence. The sedan landed on its roof, 50 feet off the highway, wheels spinning in the air like a dying insect. The air was a haze of dust and heat. Blood dripped from Knox's temple. He was upside down, strapped in by the seatbelt, Glock wedged under the dash. Footsteps crunched gravel. 2 men approached. Grayson and Burke. Both still in uniform. Both grinning. Grayson barked, "Out. Now." Knox coughed, unbuckled, and dropped hard into the shattered frame. His ribs screamed. He crawled out, hands raised. Blood streaked his face, shirt clinging to every breath. Grayson stepped forward, baton in hand, Burke flanking him with his own already raised. "You thought you could just lock up Vic and walk away?" Grayson hissed. Knox said nothing. Burke swung first. The baton cracked across his temple. Pain exploded white-hot. He collapsed to one knee, vision swimming, blood pouring into his eye. Grayson kicked him in the ribs, and Knox crumpled beside the wreck, his cheek pressed to hot sand. "You're finished, Knox. No choppers this time. Just dust and bones," Grayson growled, lifting his Glock. Knox blinked up at him, dazed but defiant. "You're digging your own graves," he rasped. That's when it started. A distant rumble. Not from behind. From the horizon. 3 black vans appeared out of nowhere, kicking up sand. They stopped hard. Doors flew open. 12 men in black tactical gear jumped out, rifles up. They weren't FBI. They opened fire. Grayson dove, screaming, "What the hell?" Bullets tore through the cruisers. Burke spun to fire, but a round caught him center mass. He dropped instantly, dead in the dust. Knox rolled behind the wrecked sedan as bullets pinged off metal inches from his face. He reached for the dash, his Glock still jammed near the cup holder. 6 rounds. He returned fire. 2 of the gunmen dropped. The rest pushed forward, sweeping the scrub brush, pinning him down. He could barely move, bleeding, ribs grinding with every breath. Then salvation. Rotor blades. Hayes' chopper roared in, spotlight slicing through the storm of sand. 6 agents rappelled out, rifles blazing. The attackers broke formation, bullets snapping through the air. One took a round to the leg, dropped screaming. The rest scrambled, dragging wounded to the vans. They peeled off, tires screeching, leaving behind 2 dead, 1 injured, and a burned-out cruiser. Grayson was gone. Vanished into the scrub. Knox stood slowly, blood dripping from his face. His Glock trembled in his grip. Hayes ran over, vest streaked with sand. "You good?" he shouted. Knox nodded, barely. "They weren't cops," Hayes said, dragging the wounded gunman into the clearing. "Then who?" Knox asked, breathing ragged. Hayes ripped open the attacker's vest. No name tag. Just a patch. A coiled snake over a star. No ID. Just a number. Knox knelt. Pulled off the man's helmet. Buzz cut. Mid-30s. Blood in his teeth. "Who sent you?" Knox demanded. The man coughed, blood bubbling at his lips. Then a single word. "Warren." Then he died. Knox stood slowly, the heat like a vice around his chest. Clyde Warren. Mayor of El Paso. 3 terms. Silver hair. Handshakes and charm. A man who'd once toasted Knox at a charity gala. And now the name behind the sniper. The mob. The planted drugs. Hensley was just a pawn. Warren was the king. Knox's jaw clenched as he looked east toward the skyline. The war wasn't over. It was about to go vertical. The sun dipped behind the western ridge as Jeremiah Knox rolled up to the mansion. A sprawling stucco fortress perched high on a bluff overlooking El Paso. Spanish tile roof. Cast iron gates. An imported fountain trickling crystal water near a circular drive paved in flagstone. Everything about it screamed power. Quiet, entrenched, untouchable power. Clyde Warren's guards barely looked at Knox. His FBI badge was all they needed. He didn't flash his Glock. Didn't show the blood seeping through his fresh white shirt. Just walked straight through. Limping, bruised, bandaged but standing. The wire clipped to his collar was live. Hayes and his team were 40 miles out, listening in real time. Waiting. Inside, the temperature dropped to 70 degrees. Marble floors. Polished banisters. A chandelier the size of a car hanging over the foyer. Knox didn't stop to admire it. He was led down a hall into a mahogany-paneled study. There he was. Clyde Warren. El Paso's king. Gray hair combed back. Tailored navy suit. A tumbler of bourbon in one hand, polished loafers propped on a footstool like a man without a care in the world. He smiled as Knox entered, like they were old friends sharing a joke. "Rough couple days, Director Knox." Knox didn't sit. "You sent gunmen to kill me." Warren swirled his drink. "Gunmen? Sounds theatrical." "I buried Hensley. Got your militia patch off a corpse. One of them named you before bleeding out. I've got your precinct on tape. I've got your judge's warrant. Your lies. Your mob. All of it." Warren chuckled. "Jeremiah, you think this is about a dirty cop and a bad warrant?" He stood, moved closer. The bourbon sloshed gently in his glass. "I've kept this city clean for 20 years. The cartels pay me to keep it quiet. The oil boys write checks to keep it safe. Your noise. You stir the pot. You bring cameras. I had senators at my fundraiser last month, and now I've got you bleeding across my rugs because you don't know when to shut up." Knox didn't flinch. "You planted cocaine in my house. Had my son cuffed. My wife humiliated on the evening news. That's not keeping peace. That's terrorism. Warren stepped closer, his voice low. I buried 12 like you before you even graduated Quantico. I own the sheriff. The judges. Half the bureau in this state reports to my donors. You think locking up a small-town tyrant like Hensley means anything? I'll have him out in a year. Voss will bury the paperwork, the department will cook the footage, and you'll be sitting in front of an ethics board with a target on your back. Knox smiled. Good. Then you won't mind repeating that for the tape. Warren blinked. Then the bookshelf behind Knox exploded. Gunfire. 10 armed men stormed in, dressed in black fatigues with no insignia, AR-15s sweeping the room. Warren stepped back as one yelled, "He's wired. Take him down." Knox dove behind the desk. Wood splintered as bullets shredded the furniture. Marble cracked. Glass shattered. The bourbon decanter exploded on the wet bar. He rolled, pulled his Glock 1 round left. Took a breath, fired. Dropped the first gunman with a shot to the neck. Grabbed the rifle from the body before it hit the floor. Rolled again. Returned fire. 2 more down. The room turned into a kill box. He ducked behind a sofa as bullets tore through the upholstery, foam bursting into the air. He popped up short controlled bursts. Another assailant dropped. 5 left. Then 3. Then one with a combat knife lunged across the room, screaming. Knox sidestepped, slammed the butt of his rifle into the man's temple. Bone cracked. The body dropped. Silence. Only the thrum of helicopter blades in the distance. Hayes' voice cracked through his earpiece. 2 minutes out. Knox staggered toward the hallway, blood on his shirt, his shoulder wound reopened, footsteps echoing behind him as he kicked open the garage door. Warren was there frantically fumbling keys into a black Escalade. Knox raised the rifle. Fired a single shot. Tire blew. Warren froze. Out of options, Knox said. The mayor dropped the keys. 20 seconds later, the FBI swept in. Agents in tactical vests hauled Warren to his knees, zip ties locking tight around his wrists. The news vans were already pulling up. Cameras flashing. Live feeds rolling. Warren didn't speak. Just stared as Knox walked past, shoulders heaving. You'll rot for this, Warren spat. Knox stopped. I'm just getting started. The chopper blades whipped the air as Warren was loaded into a convoy. His empire, the judges, the drug routes, the cash trails exposed in one broadcast. Inside the SUV, Hayes handed Knox a satellite phone. Lena and Jamal are being released. Charges dropped. Voss is folding. Knox closed his eyes for half a beat, a breath catching in his chest. The nightmare that began on Highway 80 had just been detonated in full view of the world. But he didn't feel relief. Not yet. Because something still lingered. A cost not measured in arrests or headlines. As the convoy pulled away, Knox turned to see a familiar shape on the sidewalk: Lena. Jamal at her side, holding a backpack. His eyes were red from tears. Lena's were hard. Knox stepped forward. You're free. We did it. Lena held up an envelope. Divorce papers. We're done, Jeremiah. You saved the world. Not us. He reached out. She stepped back. Jamal looked up. I love you, Dad. Then turned away. They walked off into the twilight, their silhouettes swallowed by taillights and dust. Knox stood frozen. Empire dismantled. Justice served. But the price? Everything. And he wasn't sure it had been enough. Jeremiah Knox watched the SUV carrying his wife and son vanish down the drive, the envelope of divorce papers still warm in his palm. His hand trembled not from pain, not from blood loss, but from the weight of it. He'd torn down an empire, kicked in the doors of corruption, dragged Clyde Warren into the sun. But Lena's voice still rang louder than the chopper above him, "You saved the world. Not us." He stood in silence as agents loaded Warren into a secure transport van, his hands zip-tied, head low, the last flicker of arrogance drained from his face. The mayor's confession was already making headlines, audio recorded clean on the wire. Bribery, drug routes, fake warrants, a militia hit squad. The whole thing was unraveling live. Sirens wailed. Helicopters hovered. The media swarmed the perimeter like vultures circling a dying beast. Knox walked past the wreckage of the study, blood, broken glass, smoke curling from bullet holes in the plaster. He leaned against the SUV, eyes shut, chest tight. Hayes approached, nodding toward the burning sky. "We've got him. Feds are in lockdown mode. Everything Warren touched is under audit. Voss is already lawyering up." Knox opened his eyes slowly. "What about Lena and Jamal?" "They're safe. Clean. Witness protection if you want it." He shook his head. "They're gone. Not just from this. From me." Hayes didn't respond. Just handed him a USB drive. "Every file. Every name. You earned it." Knox took it, pocketed it. And then came the shot. It cracked the air like a firework. Knox staggered. Something tore through the fabric of his vest, searing across his ribcage. He hit the ground hard, blood soaking through his shirt as Hayes screamed, "Shooter!" Rooftop. Agents scattered, rifles up. Another shot rang out, pinging off the Suburban's windshield. Knox crawled behind a planter, vision swimming, adrenaline drowning the pain. A flutter of white landed next to him. A note. "Same black ink. Same handwriting that you're next, traitor." Hayes fired toward the rooftop. The shooter vanished behind a chimney. Moments later, a second FBI chopper swept low, spotlights dancing over rooftops. But the gunman was gone. Knox clutched his side, blood pooling under his fingers. He turned to look toward the transport van where Warren sat cuffed behind reinforced glass. Their eyes locked. And Warren smiled. Not wide. Not mocking. Just, knowing. Hayes rushed to his side. "It's a graze. You're lucky." Knox didn't feel lucky. He felt hunted. He was bleeding on the front lawn of a crime lord's mansion with cameras rolling and crowds watching. And even in victory, they still wanted him gone. This wasn't Warren's endgame. It was someone else's opening move. Knox was still a target. Still the story. The next day, the headlines exploded, "Mayor exposed. FBI hero or rogue agent. Mob connection unveiled." But underneath the celebration, under the justice, the seed of doubt had already been planted. Rumors that the raid was excessive. That Knox had gone off script. That maybe, just maybe, he'd fabricated parts of it. After all, hadn't he fled the precinct? Stolen a cruiser? Attacked officers? By noon, the Bureau's Office of Professional Responsibility had launched an inquiry. Hayes called to warn him. "They want to question your methods. Not the results. Just the optics." Knox laughed bitterly. The optics. His face still had stitches. His shoulder was a web of gauze. His marriage was over. His son wouldn't return his texts. And the system that tried to kill him now wanted to audit his tone. He walked into the hearing room 2 days later, suit pressed, back straight. Cameras clicked. Microphones buzzed. A panel of agents sat beneath the seal of the United States. One cleared his throat. "Agent Knox, do you feel your actions escalated the situation in El Paso?" Knox smiled faintly. "I didn't escalate anything," he said. "I survived it. He pulled the note from his pocket, placed it on the desk. The panel members leaned forward to read it. The ink hadn't faded. "You're next, traitor." Knox leaned back. "This isn't over. Not for me. Not for any of us. You can call it a case. You can file it as an operation. But I lived it. And trust me, there's more out there." The room went quiet. And that's when Hayes stepped in. He dropped a folder on the table. Unsealed. Dozens of names. Offshore accounts. A network tied not just to El Paso but Phoenix, Dallas, Baton Rouge, Miami. Every name traced to Warren. Every dollar connected to dirty courts, rigged precincts, dead bodies. The room erupted. The investigation pivoted. Suddenly, Knox wasn't the problem anymore. He was the proof. And the reckoning was just beginning. 3 weeks later, the war room buzzed. Not with panic but purpose. Screens lit up the dim bunker on the outskirts of Austin, Texas. Data poured in bank records, shipping manifests, sealed court transcripts that should have never existed. Every thread pulled from Clyde Warren's empire unraveled into something deeper, darker. And at the center of it all was Jeremiah Knox. No longer a hunted man. Now, a scalpel in the Bureau's hands, carving into a network that stretched across half the country. 23 corrupt officials indicted. 5 sheriffs under federal lockup. Judge Voss disbarred and facing conspiracy charges. The mayor of Baton Rouge had already stepped down under pressure. But none of it felt like a win. Because Knox wasn't whole. He stood by the surveillance table, hands behind his back, suit clean but jaw still stitched. His ribs still bruised. His shoulder barely healed. He hadn't spoken to Lena since the divorce papers were signed. Jamal hadn't replied to a single message. He'd stopped trying after message 23. The system had listened when he bled on camera but had turned cold the moment the news cycle moved on. Hayes entered the room, tablet in hand. "We got the last signature." Warren's financial handler flipped. Offshore routing numbers matched the same militia that hit you in the desert. Same ones behind the sniper. Knox nodded once. "Who gave the order?" "Not Warren. Not directly." Hayes handed him a folder. Inside, a name. Senator Douglas Klein. Knox exhaled slowly. So it was federal. Hayes nodded. Backed the war on crime bill. Funneled millions into privatized prisons. Warren was just a node. Klein's the hub. Knox closed the folder. "Then we finish it." 2 days later, he was in D.C., walking into the Senate Ethics Committee chamber like a ghost back from the dead. Cameras flashed. His face, the face from the viral video, the bridge attack, the precinct ambush, now clean, calm, colder. Inside, Senator Klein sat smug in a navy pinstripe, sipping from a glass bottle of water like this was just another nuisance. Knox sat across from him. Opened the folder. Laid out the wire transfers. The burner phone pings. The militia contracts signed through shell companies. The orders. Klein's smirk faltered. "Director Knox," he said, "you have no authority here." Knox smiled thin. "I don't need authority. Just truth." The committee chairman leaned forward. "Mr. Knox, are you accusing a sitting senator of financing an assassination attempt on a federal officer?" "I'm not accusing," Knox said. "I'm confirming." The room went still. When the press conference broke 2 hours later, the headlines were no longer "FBI Director under review." They were "Senator implicated in murder-for-hire conspiracy." Knox stood at the podium, tight, voice level. "Justice isn't a destination," he said. "It's a fight. And some of us bleed for it long before anyone listens." He stepped away. Said nothing more. That night, he stood alone outside the hotel, the Capitol dome lit up behind him. His phone buzzed. One new message. Jamal. I saw the hearing. Mom did too. Just, don't get hurt again. Okay. Knox stared at the screen. Then typed slowly. Not planning to. I love you, son. He didn't expect a reply. But it came. We love you too. He slipped the phone into his pocket, staring out at the skyline. He'd survived. But not unchanged. There would always be another Warren. Another Hensley. Another coward with a badge or a pen trying to bury people like him under paper, concrete, or lies. But now, they'd think twice. Because they'd remember the name. Jeremiah Knox. The man who didn't break. Didn't run. Didn't die quietly in the desert. The man who turned a corrupt system inside out and made the world watch. Jeremiah Knox didn't ask to become a symbol. He didn't plan to expose an empire of corruption, or turn his own blood into headlines. All he wanted was to get home. But when the law turned on him, when his badge couldn't protect his family, when lies tried to bury his legacy, he stood up. He fought back. And he made them regret ever underestimating him. From a flipped sedan in the desert, to the witness stand in a packed courtroom, to the front gates of a politician's mansion, Knox showed the world what real justice costs. And what it demands. But even in victory, he paid a price no man should have to pay. So now we ask you, was the system ever built to protect men like him? Or just to break them? Thank you for watching this far. If this story moved you, hit like to push it further, comment with your thoughts or what you would have done in Knox's place, and don't forget to subscribe to follow more stories where truth fights back. Because sometimes, justice doesn't wear a robe. It walks in bruised and walks out with the truth.